Good afternoon and welcome to Women Lives Matter. Women Lives Matter on Women Radio 91.7. Today on Women Lives Matter, we're discussing building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. Welcome once again to Women Lives Matter. My name is Somto Titilayo Ajama. Globally, according to the World Health Organization's data from 2021, almost 1 in every 3 women have been subjected to intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both, at least once in their lifetime. Women suffer different forms of violence such as sexual assault, domestic violence, femicide, early marriage, female genital mutilation. Yes, that's abuse too. Different forms of physical violence, as we've said. Physical abuse is one of them as well. Psychological, emotional, sexual violence, and financial abuse. Yes, that's abuse too. Hence this project, Women Lives Matter, an initiative of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by Ford Foundation. The whole aim of this project is to build community-level accountability mechanisms and enhance collaboration between women leaders and traditional institutions in addressing gender-based violence. Once again, I am Somto Titilayo Ajama, and today on Women Lives Matter, we are discussing building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. And my guest today, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, Executive Director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, aka WADC, is here to enlighten us on the subject matter today. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on Women Lives Matter today. I hope your day has been going well.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much, Women Radio, for what you do for women. We are always very proud of you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Akiode, for joining us on Women Lives Matter today. Now, if you want to join the conversation, you can do that by calling the number 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. Now, you can also send in text messages or WhatsApp messages to 0703 175 6537. 0703 175 6537. You can also listen live, yes, via the website www.wfm917.com. That's our website, www.wfm917.com. Or just do the best thing that can give you Women Radio just within the tap of your fingers. Download the app. Download the mobile app. WFM 917 on Google Play Store and on iOS as well. Women Lives Matter, once again, is an initiative of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by Ford Foundation. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, Dr. Akiode. Now, this particular project is one that just by the title itself gives you a wholesome idea into what the general context or concept is. Now, this is supporting a community-led project on ending violence against women and girls. Tell me why this is critical at this point, and how did we get here? How did you arrive at this?
Well, thank you very much. For so long, violence against women and girls have been on the front burner for advocacy and by women-led organizations, and also if even by government, as a big problem that needs to be solved. It is a health problem. Violence against women and girls is a health problem, it's a social problem, and we can see also a lot of manifestation of violence in as a legal problem, because there are also conversations around access to justice, on this issue. So it's been a priority issue for everyone, because if women and girls are not safe in their homes, if they are not safe in the community, if they are not safe in public spaces, it's very difficult for them to be able to contribute to the growth and development of the society. So this has been a major challenge, and how to respond to it. And we know that majority of our people in Nigeria live in rural area. Mm-hmm. So then the community then becomes very important. So we have a situation where through the media, through radio. Yes, radio gets to the grass more than any other media platform. But we have realized that the work have dovetailed so much in the urban area, so leaving the bulk of the population unresponded to. So we then decided to have a community engagement in this regard to bring the voices of people in the community together towards zero tolerance to ending violence against women and girls. And so that's what led us to the community and why we think the community is critical. So we currently work in the 6th region in Southwest, although we work in another project also in the Northeast, Borno, Yobe, Bauchi, Adamawa, but the 4th is supporting projects in the Southwest Nigeria, where we now have what we call the community response teams, where the community had come together to understand what violence against women means. They have understood the fact that it could be psychological, it could be physical, so it's beyond just beating and just assault. So it could be emotional, it could be economical. A man can decide, for example, from the research that we did before the project, from the baseline, we realized that one of the practices that is common in Southwest now is what we call abandonment. And, on the surface, when you see a man abandons children, with a wife, and run away, you might not know that that's also a form of economic violence. So you put out there to be able to take care of all those children, and then you think you can't survive because of the economic crisis. Rather than finding partnership on survivor, you run away and you leave, the woman with the children to take care of them. And if you look at even in terms of response by the state, the Lagos state government, I think about 2 years ago, had made that as part of the law to arrest any man who abandons his wife and children, as a form of violence against women.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just so that people understand where we're going with this. And this is just a foundation.
Yeah.
But I need you to repeat that part. I need you to repeat the part you just spoke about the law.
Okay.
For, repetition always helps. So let them know that, please.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm saying is that as part of addressing violence against women and girls in a place like Lagos State, the Lagos State government had made a law against anyone who abandons his wife, and children, because it's seen as a form of violence against women. You leave her with the responsibility, to take care of those children that both of you, give birth to. And so we see that as a very common factor of violence against women in Southwest Nigeria. And from our data and our research, not only in Lagos, it's all over. So people just run away, leave the wife, the wife and the children, to take care of themselves. It is a form of violence because she has to look for how to cater for the children,
exactly.
Another shelter and a whole lot of other things. So what I'm trying to say is that in terms of definition of violence against women and girls, it is not only the physical violence that we hear of, which is the battery, the domestic violence, that there are other forms which can be psychological. A lot of women have gone to the level of depression. A lot of women have gone to the level of depression, so which is in itself emotional, which is psychological. We have several cases where women are depressed because they are not beaten. They are not beaten by the husband, but they're depressed because of the emotional things that they go through, on a daily basis.
In line with this, because I'm believing from what you're saying now that this is more prevalent in these rural areas, particularly with reference to the Southwest. So what has been done, minus the law you just mentioned, which of course I must commend the state for coming up with that. And I think the more people know about that, the lesser the number of cases that we will hear when it comes to cases of abandonment, as you've rightly said. So what has been done to address these forms of social norms or forms of economic violence that have been meted out to women over time, particularly in the community? What has been done so far?
Well, we have built structures. We have built structures in that regard. So we have the community response teams that working on this, that are supporting women, in this regard. So we have what we call the paralegal structure, which is supporting us in this regard.
And that's great news. That's definitely great news. And what has the success of that been like so far? Because sometimes we hear of structures like this, and I mean this with all purity of heart when I say we've heard of initiatives like this in times past, and even in the news you hear of the government coming up with different schemes to accommodate these women and to try to put a structure together that in a way that they can be attended to. But sometimes there's no follow through, and then you can't really gauge the success rates of these schemes that they've put together. So what would you say is the success rate, or what has the success of this intervention been so far? Okay, we're having slight challenges hearing right now. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Yes, much better.
I can hear you.
Thank you very much.
So we have had we've been able to create about 36 communities across the Southwest where the community response team now respond to, and we have gotten in the last 1 year over 3,000 cases attended to, by the community response teams. We've had simplification of the violence against persons prohibition law. We have had about 12 organizations that are sub-grantees of the organizations that are working at the state level. So we have had quite a number of success, in those places where people know now where to who to speak to and where to speak to. And these are very rural communities that we are working in across the Southwest. Yeah.
Wow, that definitely is good news, and I really like the sound of that, because sometimes, as I said earlier, we hear of cases of initiatives, of schemes put together, but we can't really tell how far they've gone. Now, with the 36 communities, over 300 cases, there definitely has been a significant level of success. So thank you very much for even putting this together in the very first place. Now, I have to ask this because this is very pertinent to this conversation, because like it or not, with schemes like this, with initiatives like this, they carry their own fair share of customized challenges. I say customized because this is not a regular terrain for people. This is special to a certain set of people, to a certain kind of people who can actually put this together and achieve this. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you've encountered so far?
Yeah, one of the major challenges that we have encountered is the political will issue, and you realize that the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law was passed, and a lot of people don't also have access to it. What is expected is that once a law is passed, the state is expected to popularize the law, but the state is waiting for funding agency, donor agency to do that for them. So the laws are there, and people are not aware. Very few states, apart from I think Lagos State, have also created institutions, to make sure that they respond to violence against women. We have states in the Southwest where they don't have a single shelter where women can hide if there are violence. We have very few states where they don't even have a structure of the state, but apart from the welfare office of the government, of the Ministry of Women Affairs. So even when we have the welfare, they are not trained, to be able to respond to the issues adequately. There are no funds in terms of resources that are built, for responding, to these issues. So these are some of the problems that, have affected responding to issues of violence against women, and girls. And then, of course, the patriarchal structure is still very there. They are still there, so it's becoming very difficult, for us to deal with that, those patriarchal structures in the country. The traditional rulers, the female genital mutilation that is out there, that is out there. People are still doing it in communities. So, because the justice system is also not strong enough, to deal with that, that's also is a big challenge, in responding to some of these issues.
I really appreciate the outlining of some of these issues that you've mentioned, because it brings to the fore some of the basic challenges that our system in general has. Political will, definitely we're still talking about political will, and we'll still be talking about it till tomorrow, because there's just an awakening that people are getting to be familiar with now as regards what their duties are, how they can contribute, and all of that. Now, let me draw your attention to the shelters that you mentioned. You said there are not enough shelters for women that have been abused or have encountered violence. Do you think this is something that the government should pay specific attention to going forward?
Yes, it's important and that's why it's important for us to have a multi-sectoral, because the government must also recognize that violence against women cannot be dealt with by just a Ministry of Women Affairs or by just a group, of people. It is something that has to be dealt with by. So whether it's the sector on health, whether it's sector on education, whether it's sector on information, the information ministry also has a role to play, the budget ministry. So we first need as a country to have a multi-sectoral organizing of responding to violence against women. If we don't have that, it might be very difficult. What we see now is just that people are working in silos, and working in silos alone, might not be good enough, to address the issue of violence against women and girls.
Very true. Very true. Thank you very much so far. It's 19 minutes past 2 on Women Radio 91.7, and this is still Women Lives Matter. Today on Women Lives Matter, we're discussing building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. Building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. Women Lives Matter is an initiative of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by Ford Foundation. My name is Somto Titilayo Ajama, and I'm speaking with my guest today, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, Executive Director that has posed a major challenge to the success of this project so far. Has there been any patriarchal pushback that has posed a major challenge for you so far?
Pushback we have had in this regard. And for example, at the community level, the traditional structures are very strong at those levels. So we have had situation whereby, for example, getting some of the community people to understand that beating your wife is against the law. They believe that they married the wife and then it's their property and all. So we have that kind of problem there. Even the issue of female genital mutilation, So we've had at the community level some challenges in that regard, where for example, we deal with the traditional rulers in those communities, and some of them told us that people have asked them, how many of your community members do you want to send to jail? If they are found raping people and all of that. So So we have some of them who have been reluctant, to act, in accordance to the law. But one of the ways that we have been using to mitigate that is to say, hey, nobody's above the law. Once someone violates the law, the community should let them know that the organizations that are working in those states are ready to take up the matter. So once they bring the case, because we during the project we realized that a lot of things go to the traditional rulers. People go and meet them, to tell them about their problems, to tell them about rape cases in their community, and they have the social norms also allow them to be able to weigh in some sanctions. In those states when things like that are done in community, they can expel the person from coming to the community. Modernity probably will not allow that to happen now. So we've had situation whereby some community have moved against their leadership because they have tried to address the issue of violence against women in the community. So that has been our major challenge, but we are dealing with it by educating the community the more, getting everybody involved, then making sure that there is a form of ownership, by community itself, so that the community becomes like the building block, to respond to the violence that they see in their communities. And so we have categorized people in different levels. We have targeted people who are students. So we work. The community response teams go to the communities, to work with the school. They also go to communities to work with traditional. So currently, they started working with the female chiefs and the Yalodjas, because we realized that the female traditional chiefs who are the Yalo, they have the right to sit in council, to deal with issues with the council members who are the chiefs, in those communities. So we work with them to deal with those chiefs, to bring those issues on the table, so that when they bring issues to the palace, the women also sit there and they can also influence a lot of things. So, but the pushback has been majorly by people in the community who feel that, by coming into this community, that means that you want to start sending them to jail and all of that. But what is important is that we have to stem violence against women and girls, and that's critical. So we are building them to understand that norms, that stereotypes and beliefs has to change.
100% true. All right. You mentioned something again in line with the challenges earlier about funds for responding to cases of violence against women and girls. Now, when you mention funds, my first thought, if I'm being honest, is funds that come from the pockets of organizations like yours, that come together to have this common purpose. And what's the role of the state government? I'm saying states now because majority of the focus is on Southwest and some areas in the North as well. So they're more state specific as opposed to region specific, for lack of a better explanation. But has there been any resistance by the state? Have you, when I mean resistance, I mean in reference to funding or any resistance in general. But in reference to funding, I'd like an answer to that. And then if you've experienced any other resistance from the state on any other grounds.
Yeah, well, on this particular project, I think we have had more of collaboration by the state, than resistance from them. I think the first ladies of the 6 states have been very supportive of bringing issues of violence against women and girls, to the fore. Some of them have actually worked assiduously to ensure that institutions are created. I am aware that in Ekiti State, as of today, there is the shelter, a big shelter, like a one-stop shelter that has been built, in the state, which can accommodate about 300 and something people. Likewise, I think Osun State is yet to be launched, and Lagos State also. So gradually we can see some kind of improvement, from the responses from the state level. But the major thing is that the state has also not provided enough publicity around the issue. So that makes it very, very difficult, to even get people to use some of the institutions or structures that are being built. So for me, I think one of the major things that I think the state is not doing well is adding this as a budget issue. The state must own the fight against gender-based violence. If the state does not own it, it becomes very difficult to be able to end violence against women. We cannot rely on donor agencies or people who are funding, to support this. If the state is not putting money where their mouth is, it cannot work. So the state cannot, in Nigeria as we speak today, in the 36 states, about 33 states have passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law. Some of them are coming up with standard operating procedure on how to deal with it, because we have realized that there is a deficit of capacity, of people who are responding to violence against women. You have people who are working in the ministry who probably don't have an idea of how to respond to someone who comes to meet them and say that there is violence against them. So there must be a standard operating procedure. What do you expect from a civil society organization that is taking a particular matter up? How do you expect them? What is the issue of confidentiality? We have seen in several cases where even media, when they bring out some of these issues, when it has to do with young children, their pictures will be shown, to the world. So things like that. So there are some basic things that we need to understand to be able to respond to this positive. So the coordination is very important, and the state is not doing much, in that regard. And it might also be because these are emerging response issues. So in terms of institution that we need to create, in terms of budget that we need to put to it, they are not they are not there. So until when we start putting this thing one by one, together, we probably will not be able, to address violence against women issues.
Thank you very much once again. And this is still Women Lives Matter. Today on Women Radio, we're discussing building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. Building community-level accountability for ending violence against women. The Women Lives Matter is an initiative of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by Ford Foundation. Once again, this project intends to build community-level accountability mechanisms and enhance collaboration between women leaders and traditional institutions in addressing gender-based violence. Now, in case you're wondering, how are we even going to get to that point? That's why this program is set aside for you, so that you can know how we're getting there and possibly even how you can be a part of it. This is still Women Lives Matter. My name is Somto Titilayo Ajama, and today I'm discussing with Dr. Abiola Akiode-Afolabi, Executive Director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Ward C. To contribute or ask questions, the number to call is 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. Also, you can send in a text message or a WhatsApp message to 0703 175 6537. 0703-175-6537. Once again, call 07000-917-917. Send a text or WhatsApp message to 0703-175-6537. Now, talking about the state having some more work to do, are there other stakeholders that you're targeting in the Southwest? And why specifically? Why are these stakeholders or specific stakeholders why are they important to the cause?
Yeah, yes, I didn't get that, please. Can you repeat that?
We were talking about the states initially and where they are lagging behind and what they can do better. So I'm talking in reference to that. Are there other stakeholders that you're targeting within the Southwest? And why are these people, if any, why are they important to the cause?
Okay, we are targeting other stakeholders. We are targeting the Yalode, as I mentioned.
Yes.
The Yalode are supposed to be the head of women. The Erelu is also supposed to be the head of women by traditionals too, and they are very prominent in the Southwest. So we believe that there's a need for them to have like a network, against gender-based violence. The Yalode they have a very strong voice in any community. So they're supposed to have a role of bringing together women at every point in time. So we have been able to reach out to the Yellow Day Council in each of the states, and we have had opportunity of engaging with them, and they are committed to doing this. So we will be seeing in the coming period some of the communities where the Yellow Days will be calling meetings around, because we have realized that addressing sexual and gender-based violence, it's very critical, and it is something that has to be done by everyone. It must be a collective thing, and it must also be a very organized way of responding to some of these issues. So the Yellow Day in their different communities are expected to be holding outreaches, and when they have like meetings and opportunities, they are supposed to be training and explaining to people on the issue of responding to violence against. So we have had meetings with quite a number. I'm sure that in the Southwest we have met over 200 from different communities. In each state we had 80 of them, which we had meetings with, who are representing different communities at different level in the local government and senatorial district across the country. So that gives us about 400 in the whole of 6 Southwest. We have also met with the Yaloja. The Yaloja people are very, they are holding a very unique role in the sense that, when we were speaking with them, we had some of them sharing with us how women had come to the market to buy things. And you just see them sit down there and, they will just start crying, about what they are going through and all of that. So the market space is a space where a lot of people go to, and a lot of women also go to that market space to buy things, to do a lot of things. And there are also women who are working in the market. So the markets in the Southwest have predominantly high number of women who face different form of violence. So they themselves, they go through it, so they can also become people who can help in terms of responding to it. So we are working with the Yalojas association in the Southwest and in also communities. And the Yaloja is so organized. They have been the traditional group in local governments, in markets. So we have as many markets as possible. So, and they always have like the head of their local government, they have the state head and all that. So we are dealing with the state heads and the local government head to be able to reach as many markets as possible, so that we can reach as many women, as possible. We're also working with the schools because we believe that the schools is also a ground where we can train people from childhood, up to so that when they are growing, we can change the mindset, the social norms at that level. So we work in the schools also to be able to, address violence against women. So we have schools that we are partnering with, where community members go there to go and speak, to people about, the issue of violence against women. So we also see them as very critical stakeholders. The Okada riders also, in communities where we work, they are also another group of people that we target, to ensure that, because we have realized that in most of the communities, the Okada is used as a way of communing children to school. And we have, from the research we did, we have realized that along the line, some of these kids are abused, by the Okada riders. So we take them as very important, because that's the mean of transportation in most of the communities and rural areas, in the Southwest. So we also work with the Okada riders, to educate them, to let them know about the implication of whatever they do, and the fact that they also have a collective responsibility, in responding to violence against women. So we also work with religious leaders, the Muslim heads, the Christian aids in Nakefa. They are part of the community response things. They are also a huge support, to the fight against violence against women, because they are standing in a position where they speak with a huge number of people. So we have a situation whereby some of these people have led issues in their different, places as stakeholders here.
Interesting take there. I really appreciate this conversation because, truth be told, we need as much sensitization. We need as many people speaking the same language on this. This is so that no one drops the ball. And if the ball is dropped at any time, somebody else can pick it up and take it from there with still the same message. So thank you very much again. Now, what is the big picture? What do we expect in the coming period, and how can we achieve this?
Yeah, one of the things that we are looking at is to see that there is zero tolerance to violence against women. So there has been increase in reportage. So we expect that it's different level. First, we see a lot of people reporting, about what has happened, about violence in their communities. But our end result is to ensure that we reduce violence against women to the barest minimum, where nobody's violated, which is a very important milestone we need to get to.
That's true.
But however, so at the level that we're in now, it's about asking people to speak out. So what we see, it's more people speaking out. So we're getting people reporting the issue. So which is also to show that a lot of people are understanding their rights. A lot of people know that the VAP law exists. A lot of people know that things need to be done to address violence against women. So, but the big picture is to see that we reduce it. So, and that has to come to being when the police knows what he has to do.
When
the institution. Exactly, institution knows the steps that needs to be taken, because some of the challenges we're still having is that people go to the police and steps are not taken. We still got cases yesterday evening, in a place like Osun State, where a 10-year-old was defiled, by someone who was about 42 years old. And the video that was sent to me, the man was begging, saying that it is the work of the devil, And, so we and I could also see that from that video that they are not reported to the police. So it's important that people must take steps, and they must hold the police accountable when things like this are done. There's also this whole thing of the need for us to have a special courts. If you look at the case of Baba Jisha in Lagos, the case, I think something started within a year, and by now he has been convicted. And so the reason why this happened in Lagos is because the court, there are special courts dealing with this matter. We were in a place like Yobe and Bauchi and Maiduguri, and we realized that on a monthly basis, the number of cases that, if we put from National Human Rights Commission and civil society together, at times the number of cases are up to like 500 in a month. So if we don't have a special court that deals with the issue, it will become very difficult, to be able to take, because so the case will be dealt with like every other case, which will take like 4 or 5 years, which are part of the reason why, people get tired and they don't want to push forward their cases on violence against women. So if you look at the Baba Jisha case that I was talking about, it took less than 1 year, for them to arrive at conviction, which is very unusual from what we see in other cases. It wasn't because Baba Jisha was a popular person or not, but it was because Lagos State had a special court, a designated court, dealing with issues of rape, sexual assault, and other things. So in that case, if you have such designation, it makes the case faster and it works better, in that, circumstance. So we need things like that. So those are the big picture we are looking at. We need states to have standard operating procedure, as I said earlier. We need costed model action plan. In Bauchi State, the state government of Bauchi State puts in a cost on what it costs them to address issues of sexual and gender-based violence, because they have seen it as an issue that would affect growth and development in that state. And so when they increased, when they did that, they came up with millions of naira that they need to use to build the capacity of the people, to train their people, to build institutions, to have structures on ground. We need things like that, so that it becomes a budget thing, on yearly basis. That is the big picture we are looking at. So they have a custom model action plan that helps on a yearly basis to address the issue of violence. So these are very important things that we need to have for us to be able to meet the big picture of ending violence, having like zero tolerance to violence against women and girls.
Finally said. Well said, well said, well said. There's a lot of ideas on what the government can do. There's a lot of places where I'm sure if you look and you assess the situation, you can tell that, maybe we need more help with this area. Maybe we need more help with this area. So what are some of the areas that you think the government can come in to end violence against women and girls? I know we mentioned the shelter earlier, but what are some other suggestions that you have in the areas that the government can come in to end violence against women and girls?
Well, I will put it at different levels. I'll put government, and I'll look at civil society, and I'll also look at police, and then others. At the government level, I think the budget is very important. Having a budget that speaks to addressing violence against women is key. Also creating institutions, staff in those institutions. If you look at other countries where this has worked well, these are things that we have in place. Like, for example, I was on a mission to a university, University of Michigan, and I met people who were working at the Center for Education of Women. So my initial thought was that maybe that Center for Education of Women is under the Faculty of Education or something like that. But it wasn't. What they had is an institution within the university where people can come in and walk in, to talk about the violence against women, to talk about the kind of support that they need. We have students who are married can come in. So we need some very innovative institutions like that, whether in our schools, whether at the public level and all that. Lagos is doing quite a lot. Lagos has the Domestic Violence Referral Assault Center. And Lagos recently had created an agency to deal with domestic violence and assault, referral. And you can see that Lagos is coming up with a lot of data that's showing that things are working. But we need all the states in Nigeria, to be able to do this, to create, because we must understand the nexus between growth development and violence. As long as people suffer violence or discrimination, it will not enable growth. It will not allow us to be able to maximize the potential. How does a woman who is beaten, go to work and do well in her workplace? So, and that's why you see a lot of women, they become ashamed because of what they have gone through in the hands of their husband. They don't want to participate in public spaces. They don't want to do politics. They don't want to go to work because, of the state that they are in. So the government needs to look at that. So we need to have some kind of people-centered approach or women-centered approach to, responding to violence, to be able to deal with that. So that's very important from the government point of view. So beyond the budget, beyond the institution, there's a need for training. Even for governments, there's a need for training for police. Police needs to be trained, adequately, in that regard, so that the police can also do what they are supposed to do, because access to justice is a big issue when it comes to, responding to issues of violence against women and girls. Other area also is the area of the civil society. There's also need for more capacity, for civil society in this regard. There must be training, to be able to respond. Then there must also be some form of specialization, in the area, of work of civil society. There are some people that can work better, working with children who are suffering from violence. I know that there are groups like CCA that are doing a lot in that regard. They also have such child protection network. So specialization can also help to a large extent, in dealing with the issue of violence against women. So civil society also need to have that kind of specialization, to be able to deal with it. The religious leaders also need to have some kind of coordination. A lot of things are happening in the churches now. If you see some of the cases that we see that are coming up, they are cases which are basically cases from the church. There are cases from the church which you see church, which you see from mosque and all of that. So these are also important institutions that must also be ready and willing, to address. So we need to have standard operating procedure. How do you respond to things like this when it happens, at the courts, at the church level? We need to also build the court system in such a way that they can be able to respond to these issues without being biased. There are a lot of stereotypes, that affect the mind of the judges. So it's also important. For example, when the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Law was passed, most of the courts are also saying that they don't have the copy of the law. So it's important for the government to also share some of the copy, with the lawyers, with the judges. The Nigerian Bar Association also need to increase their charity work in terms of what they do for the people. So we expect that people should be able to walk into lawyers in their communities, and these lawyers should be able to do pro bono, work for the people, to be able to. So meaning that if the lawyers want to take up that role, it's also become very important, for them to be trained to be able to understand how to respond and to deal with this issue. So I think that there's a need for a lot of professionalism, across board, in this area, and without that, it might really be, a major challenge. Yes.
Without that, it might be a major challenge. The government, Dr. Akiode Afolabi, is not the only point that we can turn to seek help. The community also can do more. Now, as we're talking about building community-level accountability. So what would you say the role of the community is? How can they come together to stand against violence against women and girls? What can citizens in the community do more?
There are lots of things that the citizens in communities can to end violence. The citizen can help in terms of building and strengthening the ability of people to speak out. They know it, they see it. So they must see it as a responsibility. There's a lot of impunity around issues of sexual and gender-based violence, and which has continued. If we don't build community level accountability structure, we won't be able to address it. So they must understand that the impunity is what is making more of us having more rape cases. The impunity is what is making people to continue to beat their wives and thinking that there's nothing anybody can do about it, that I have a right to do whatever I like, with my wife. She's my property. So there must be that kind of understanding in the community. So there must be a lot of sensitization. Some of these violence against persons prohibition laws that have been passed must be stepped down in local languages so that people can understand that people can understand what it is there, what is in it, so they can know that there is conviction for rape. They can know that there is conviction for when you beat your wife. There's conviction for when you ask your wife to pack out, a load, that you don't have a right to do some of those things. So it's important that we sensitization is a key thing, that we need to have in this regard to be able to, address violence against women. Then the other thing is also the capacity. There are a lot of gatekeepers at the community levels. Those capacity needs to be built, to be able to respond to violence against women. And so these are gatekeepers, could be traditional rulers, they could be institutions that we are familiar with, that are within the community, so this, they could be chief in the community, they could be religious leaders, so their capacity must be built because they have potentials of, ensuring that they address violence. The women agencies in the communities, they are very important. Whether they are different associations that, within the community, because they see the women, they deal with the women know them, and they know the women, and the women speak to them. So they also need to know where to go. One of the major issues is the question of information. People don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to address the issue. So it's important that the women agency itself is strengthened in a way that the women agency will be able to, address the issue. There must also be this ecological model approach that we think it's important. So which look at it from addressing this as a social problem, addressing it as an individual problem, and then seeing it as a community problem, as a large challenge that we're all dealing with. So we don't see it just as a problem that the government needs to solve. We see it as a problem that the individual has a role to play, a problem that the community has a role to play, and a problem that the world at large, has a role to play in responding to it. So we need that. So if we have that, what we are likely going to see is that more community women and men are speaking out and leading engagement with communities to respond to violence against women. We'll see more traditional leaders publicly condemning sexual and gender-based violence. You'll see more women who are holding traditional tools, leading advocacies and making sexual and gender-based violence a council agenda. And also leading initiative in their different communities. We are seeing that happening already with the project, where in some communities in Ekiti State, you see some traditional rulers using it as part of their birthday package, for people to speak on ending violence against women. You also see more cases are being treated because everybody now knows what to do. So meaning that treating a case, you don't need to look for an NGO, So you can also say when you are raped, the first thing to do is make sure you don't claim the semen from your body.
Yes.
Make sure that you go and report to the police. Make sure that you go to Mirabel Center, so that they can, do some medical check on you. Make sure that those are documented so that when the rapist is arrested, by the police, there is enough evidence to do that. So these are some of the steps that we need to take up. So then the police impunity too, if we use that model, we need to also ensure that the police is also seen as a very critical stakeholders in this regard. Because if the police says there is no case to answer, by implication what it means is that the rapist is going to go free. So they need to also understand all this. So the market, the outreach, and a whole lot of other things needs to be done.
Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure there's so much more to say, but I'm sure we'll cover it over a period of time. But for now, thank you so much for joining us today on Women Lives Matter.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Hamdai.
So yes, people do need to be more enlightened on violence against women so as to consciously build a society where violence against women is completely condemned and not seen as a norm, because the lives of women really matter and need to be fought for. Thank you very much to my guest, Dr. Abiola Akeode-Afolabi, and thank you to you for tuning in to Women Lives Matter today. Thank you to producer Esther Alaribe and, of course, Executive Director Tomu Okewale Shunaya. Join me again on Women Lives Matter. Let's join hands together to end violence against women. Women Lives Matter is an initiative of Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center in partnership with Women Radio 91.7 and funded by Forward Foundation. Once again, my name is Sumto Titilayo Ajama. Good afternoon.
WFM 91.7.